Okay, so 2.6 is geometric proof. This is going to be the title in our notebook. And again, because it's a new section, that will be on a right-hand page. Okay, and then we will go over how we're going to put those in as well. Okay, and we have our word bank because that is going to help us. Okay, so 2.6 are geometric proof. So what we're going to start today are 2-column proofs, which are nice and organized. So in a 2-column proof, you're going to list the steps. And when you list the steps, that's going to be in a column that is called statements. And then you are going to write the matching reason in the right column. Okay, so you have a statement and then you have a reason for that statement. Okay, and the statements go in the left, the reasons are going to go in the right. So we're going to do a proof together. So for our first example, it says write a justification for each step. Sometimes it'll just say given and prove, a lot of times like what we're going to do next. So you're going to write a justification for each step. Given that, so we're going to highlight what we're given. So we are given that angle A and angle B are supplementary, and the measure of angle A is 45 degrees. So for the first one, we actually have all the statements written down for us. What we're going to do is provide the reasons. I told you guys yesterday, the first step in your proof, the reason should always be what? Given, what you're given. So if you're given A and B are supplementary and the measure of A is 45 degrees, your reason is just going to be given. Okay, and we're just going to write a little note that you always start with given statement and first step. Yeah, Ella?
So for the quiz, will we have this to look off of?
I will give you a word bank that has all those on there. It just won't have your hints on there. Yep. So our next one says that the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B equals 180. So the important thing to remember is you're going off of what happened in the step before it. So see how it said that the measure of A and B are supplementary? And now we can conclude that because they're supplementary, they equal 180. Okay, do you guys have a guess about what would go here? Yeah, Matt? Are you sure?
Definition of supplementary.
Yep, exactly. So this is going to be the definition of supplementary angles. And you guys can go ahead and put sup, and then you can go ahead and put the abbreviation for angles. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so now we have to see what happened from step 2 to step 3. So this is what I do. I look and I try to see what is different. Okay, so with the person next to you, if you're sitting on the right side, I want you to tell the person next to you what is different from step 2 to step 3. So if you're on the right, you're going to tell the person on your left. Okay, so Adele, what did you tell Ethan was different?
I said they supposed to be 45.
Okay, good. So the only thing that was different is first I have the measure of angle A, but now I have the 45 degrees, right? And then, Clara, I heard you even telling why. What's our reason?
Substitution.
Good. So you just use substitution, right? Here you said that the measure of A was 45. Now you're just plugging it in, so that will be substitution. Okay? And then this is going to be another reason from our bank. Now, even though the first reason is given, this is never proof. Okay? That doesn't tell us anything about where that comes from. Right? So now we have to look at this and say, all right, it used to be equal to 180, now it's equal to 135, and the 45 went away. Well, if you were solving this for the measure of angle B, Izzy, what would you do? Yeah, you would subtract 45 from both sides. So if you're subtracting it from both sides, Anakin, what's that reason going to be? Yep, so you're going to use the subtraction, and then you can just write prop of, and then equals for equality. All right, so now we're going to try the next one. So the next one, you can tell, now we're going to have to fill in some of the statements. So we're going to fill in the blanks to complete the 2-column proof. And then I'm going to highlight the given. And then I'm going to highlight in a different color what we have to prove. Okay, so Christina, the given is always going to go where in our proof? The given is always going to go where? Yep, it's always going to be our number one step. Okay, so they already have the reason given. So now what we have to do is write in our given statements. So our given statements, we really have two of them, and that's that B is the midpoint of AC and AB is congruent to EF. Right? Now for the next one, it says AB is congruent to BC. I have all of these things floating around, but it's really hard for me to visualize them unless I have a picture. So one of my strategies that I'll use if I'm struggling in a proof to figure out my reasons is to draw a picture. So if B is the midpoint of AC, can you guys draw a picture that shows that B is the midpoint of AC? Will you do that for me now? Yep, anywhere. I'll put it here, you can put it below. Okay, so I have AC. And Max, where did you put that point B? In the direct middle, right? So if it's in the direct middle, okay, remember that it cuts it in half, which makes these two congruent, which I have here. It says AB is congruent to BC. Okay, this comes from, do some of you guys think that you know? Okay, so because this is a midpoint, isn't that what tells me that these two are equal? Because if it's a midpoint, it cuts it in half. Okay, so you'll see this a lot of times. Yeah.
The definition of a midpoint.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so because you're using the midpoint, it is just going to be the definition of a midpoint. And for definition, if you just want to abbreviate DEFN of a midpoint, and you can abbreviate midpoint as well. Okay, and you'll see this a lot. If they tell you it's a midpoint, you're going to use definition of a midpoint. If it says it bisects, you're going to use definition of a bisector. Okay, so you'll see that a lot as you practice. Now, the last step is what we have to prove is true. So my final step is to prove that BC is congruent to EF. So that's what goes in the last step. BC is congruent to EF. Okay, and I'm just going to write a little note that your last statement is what you're given to prove. Okay, now here we don't really know what EF is. We could add that pretty much anywhere to our picture. You could extend this if you wanted and put in your E and your F. But what we do know is that AB is congruent to EF. Okay, so I'm just going to add this on the top of it. And I know they filled this one in for you for the reason, but that's not always going to happen. So I want you to understand why this reason is true. So the transitive property, right? This is saying here that AB is congruent to EF. Then here we said AB was congruent to BC. So if AB is congruent to BC and it's congruent to EF, doesn't it make sense that BC and EF are also congruent? When you have them marked the same, you can see that. They're all marked with one dash mark. Okay, so then that leads to BC is congruent to EF. And you could use the transitive property. You could also use substitution. Right, because it's like you're plugging in BC for AB, or EF for AB. Okay, so if you said substitution, that's something that I would count right as well. All right, and then we have our next example. Okay, so this is use the plan to write a 2-column proof. So basically in the plan, they give you what your statements and your reasons are to help you with this. All right, so we're going to start with the given. Okay, so you're given that 1 and 2 are supplementary, and angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. So because I know where that's going to go in my proof, I'm going to write that in there right away. So I know that angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary. And I know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. And then my first reason is always what? Given. Okay, so I already have that marked off. And then we just learned this next one. So whatever I'm going to prove, that has to go where? In my last statement box. So it says angle 3 and angle 2 are supplementary. So angle 3 and angle 2 are supplementary. So look, I already have 3 boxes filled. Okay, so when you get this on a quiz, at the very least, you should be able to fill in those 3 boxes. Now, like I said, this one does have a plan. So it says use the definitions of supplementary and congruent angles in substitution to show that the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180. So before we get to this statement, let's use what we have here. Okay, so if I'm using the definition of supplementary angles and 1 and 2 are supplementary, I know that when I add those together, the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 has to be what? 180. Okay, and then Rachel, what's going to be my reason? So they're supplementary, right? So then we're going to use the definition of supplementary angles. So this will be definition of sup angles. Okay, and again, it's just because here we're talking about how they're supplementary, which means their sum is 180. That's your definition. Okay, and it told us to use the definitions of supplementary and congruent angles and substitution. Okay, so if angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, we actually talked about this on our list. If the definition of congruent angles is used, that means the angles have the same measure. So what we can say, if they're congruent, their angles have the same measure. So the measure of angle 1 is going to be equal to what? Yeah, the measure of angle 3. And that is by the definition of congruent angles. Okay, so see how these are our reasons? We have the definition of supplementary angles. We have congruent angles. Now we want to use substitution, okay, to show that the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180. So really, they just gave us our next step. But looking at these, even if it wasn't given, if these are equal, you can replace the measure of angle 1 with the measure of angle 3 because they're equal. So the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 2 is going to equal 180 degrees, and that would be by substitution. Now, if those are equal to 180, if the sum is 180, that's just what? It's just going to be the definition of supplementary angles, so that'll be our reason. Yes, you can. You can. Yep, so you can have two of the same reason. It's not necessarily common, but in some of them you are going to have the same thing happening. Okay, so we're going to add this to the bottom. So we're just going to add a little thing that says, what should you do if you get stuck? And cry is not one of them. And give up is not one of them. Okay, so sometimes proofs can be hard, but there are lots of things in life that are going to be hard, okay? And we don't just want to give up. What we want to do is we want to work through those things, and I want to give you some things that are going to help you know where to start. So the first thing that you want to do is start with what you're given. Okay, so you're asking yourself, did I already put in the given statements? Okay, that's going to be your first step. You also know what step? Yeah, so also the prove is your last statement. Okay, so remember I said you should know those 3 boxes right away. Okay, at the very least, you're going to fill in those 3 boxes. We'll add that too. At the least, fill in those 3 boxes. Okay, so I should never just see it blank. Okay, at the very least, you have those 3 boxes filled in. And with a lot of them that you're doing today, they're going to have some of the steps filled in for you as well. Okay, what's another resource you could look at if you get stuck? Yeah, your word bank. Okay, so use the word bank to help with reasons. Okay, and I like too that you guys said like you could use your book and stuff. We'll actually compile that at the end. Another thing, this will be step 3. Okay, another thing that you want to do is ask yourself, how did we get from the previous step to the current one? Okay, you have to relate it to the previous step. You can't just look at the current one and think it's going to jump out at you. It's related to the one before it. So sometimes you can solve the previous step yourself to see what you would do. Okay, and again, it has to be that previous step. And then the last one is something that we did for the example on the other side. Remember, we weren't given a picture, but we drew one. So drawing a picture, or even if they give you a picture, marking that diagram is going to help. And when I say mark the diagram, what I mean is put in congruent segments or angles. So mark those off so that you can see them. Okay, so if you get stuck, try those 4 steps. If you're still lost, let's talk about some other resources. Okay, so somebody said you can use textbook examples. Here at school, you have me, yeah. See your teacher. You also have the Media Center study place. I'm just going to put Media Center with NHS tutors. Okay, so if I'm not here, you can go there yourself. If you're nervous about going there, Miss Livingston's in there too. She will happily introduce you to a tutor. Okay, if I'm here and you want me to walk you down there, I'll do that too. Happily do that. What if you're at home? What are some good places to look at home? Okay, yeah, so maybe there's something in Google Classroom, because in Google Classroom I post what? I post the video of the lesson. So you have lesson videos. I heard Khan Academy, that's a good one. You can search videos by topic. So sometimes just watching how to do another proof can help you with those skills. And then your textbook website is actually pretty good too. They have extra practice, some interactive practice that can be really useful. And then it's a little bit more fun because it's not like you're writing it down. Okay, so those are all some excellent things to do. Okay, and then if you have access to a older brother or sister, they can be good resources too. Some of them. If you get along. Okay, or even sometimes mom or dad. Okay, so this is going to be your homework. And then we are going to go over your homework from yesterday, but first I'm just going to show you how to put this in your notebook. And it is going to be just like yesterday's. Okay, so this is another one where you can choose. I know some of you guys liked trimming this, like trim the bottom and trim the top. So you could just put it in there vertically, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so you can either trim the top and trim the bottom, so you can put this in vertically, and I'll put the homework back up. Okay, you can also fold this. Guys, I need you quiet while I'm giving the directions. Okay, so you can also fold this, and then you can either put that in horizontally or vertically so that it opens to the side here, or that it opens up and down. And then the other one is going to go directly on the back. Okay, so again, if you just want to trim the top and then put it in there like this, that's fine. If you like just folding it so that you can open it up, or this way, opening it up, you can do that.
Are we allowed to put it on like the side that opens on this side, like the
Yes.
example one, so we can have both examples on the same page and look at it?
I really want the new one on a new page.